Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I will be your instructor. This is the Dungeon Academics Guide to Booming Blade, my preferred cantrip of choice of damage for my current set of characters. It's been no surprise that I like Warlocks. Of my 4 Dungeons & Dragons characters that I've been playing over the last few years, all of them have had at least a few levels in Warlock. Warlock adds a huge amount of versatility, flexibility, player options, and story hooks, all of which I think are important. It's also very good fun to play if you prefer charisma-based characters, which I do. So I have had a Hexblade Warlock Fighter Multiclass, which was Riplikish. I have had a Warlock Bard multiclass, which was Wheatrot. I've got 2 Hexblade Bladesinger multiclasses in Doug the Turtle and Cornelius the Bugbear. I like playing Warlocks, it's fun. And most people would agree that Eldritch Blast is the best cantrip in the game for damage dealing. And I'm not going to disagree with that just yet. Eldritch Blast is a phenomenally versatile cantrip with a large amount of damage and the ability to add enhancements in the forms of Eldritch invocations, such as Repelling Blast and Agonizing Blast. The additional damage and utility of being able to push enemies around the battlefield, especially into hazardous terrain, makes Eldritch Blast the best damage dealing cantrip in the game. But I prefer Booming Blade, and I'd like to take this opportunity to explain why. First, let's look at the damage numbers for Eldritch Blast and Booming Blade. This is always going to assume that you have Agonizing Blast and you're using the Hex spell to increase the damage on your target. These are the standards for baseline damage. But with a D10 plus a D6, and let's assume an ability score modifier of +4, Eldritch Blast should be doing about 13 damage every hit. Booming Blade, on the other hand, let's assume a D6 weapon, plus the D6 from Hex, plus 4 from your ability modifier, and then an additional D8 when the target moves. That is going to be 15.5 damage, which is a little bit more than Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast wins out on scaling though, because every time your cantrips level up at level 5, 11 and 16, I think it is, Eldritch Blast just does an additional multiplier of its damage because you do a 2nd, 3rd and 4th blast. So when it levels up once, it's doing 26 damage per turn. And again, it levels up to 39, and finally it levels up to 52 damage. Booming Blade, on the other hand, only gains an additional 2d8 damage, one of them applied on the hit and one of them applied when the target next moves, or moves in its next turn. And that 2d8 averages out to 9 damage. So as Eldritch Blast increases its damage by 13 every time it steps up, Booming Blade only increases by 9. This means that by the time you get to level 5, Eldritch Blast is out-damaging Booming Blade, and that gap widens at level 11 and level 16, making Eldritch Blast the king of damage. But I think Booming Blade can be better. Why do I think Booming Blade can be better? Well, first I have to discuss one other limitation, and this is something that people don't often think about. Because Booming Blade is applying additional damage outside of your turn, if you do a critical hit, that additional damage is not doubled. With Eldritch Blast, the whole damage set is doubled, apart from any static modifiers. All the damage dice are doubled. With Booming Blade, only the damage applied on the hit is doubled. The additional d8s are not doubled. This isn't a huge drop, with critical hits occurring only 5% of the time, but it does add a tiny little additional push to make Eldritch Blast better. But why can Booming Blade still be better, even taking that into account? Because Booming Blade is triggered on a regular weapon attack, and we're just assuming a base D6 weapon, a one-handed quarterstaff attack for most of my characters. But what happens if you have a better weapon? You could, entirely plausibly, be casting Booming Blade with a greatsword attack. That's a 2d6 damage rather than a d6. That additional 3.5 points of damage makes Booming Blade have parity with Eldritch Blast all the way up until level 11, and only then does Eldritch Blast start outstripping it. But what happens if it's not just a greatsword? What happens if it's a flame tongue greatsword? Well, that's another 7 points of damage on average, and now your Booming Blade is doing exactly the same damage as Eldritch Blast at the highest levels, and before that, definitely you're doing more. Because Booming Blade utilizes a weapon attack, you might have a magic weapon, that can actually increase the damage for Booming Blade, making it better. But there's another really important thing as well. If you are an Eldritch Blaster, you are primarily at a standoff range, casting from the safety of the back line. Now, this is a very important thing, and I have multiple characters that have utilized this. Being able to be away from the melee combat makes you more free to move, line up those great shots, and keeps you protected against enemy melee combatants. If you're fighting with melee cantrips, you are up there close and personal, and you're putting your character at risk. So Eldritch Blast is certainly safer, but if you're using your action for Eldritch Blast, that's pretty much all you're going to do. Now, sure, you could be playing a Bladesinger Wizard and doing an Eldritch Blast and an attack from a sling or a light crossbow or a hand crossbow or something like that, and that's fine. You will increase your damage. It's entirely possible, using a combination of feats and the Bladesinger ability, that you could have a crossbow attack, an Eldritch Blast, and a hand crossbow attack. That's absolutely fine. You can do that. But if you're using Booming Blade, you're up close in melee. And this is really where the Bladesinger leaps out. If you have a decent magic weapon, you could get a melee attack with that weapon. You could cast Booming Blade and perhaps even get a bonus action attack with that weapon. Polearm Master and Quarterstaff is a great combination, so you can thwack them on the head with your Quarterstaff, cast Booming Blade, and then swing the butt of the staff around and hit them with the other end. That's absolutely fine. That's what I'm going to be trying to do. And if you have a nice magic weapon, you can get a regular magic weapon attack, a Booming Blade attack, and potentially a bonus action attack, allowing you to triple up on the bonus from that magical weapon. And because of that opportunity and synergy, I think Booming Blade has great potential for doing maybe not always as much damage as Eldritch Blast, but certainly doing a comparable amount and having all the fun of being stuck in melee. Now, I like being a melee character. I've played ranged characters, I've played pure support spellcasters, and for my personal playstyle, it's not as much fun. Now, you may have a different opinion on this, and that's perfectly entitled. You are absolutely welcome to prefer being a character at standoff range. But for me, and the way I like to play the game, I like to get stuck in. Even if it puts my character in more immediate risk. It's part of the excitement of the game for me. And because of that, working out a way to make Booming Blade as good or potentially better than Eldritch Blast, that was my motivation to build my current characters, to find something that was as effective as Eldritch Blast, but more fun for the way that I like to play Dungeons and Dragons. There is one thing we haven't discussed though. Booming Blade only does the additional damage if your target moves during their turn. And that has to be a voluntary movement. You can't have an ally shove them. You can't have someone using Repelling Blast and push them. They have to choose to move for the Booming Blade additional damage to be triggered. So how can you maximize Booming Blade? By ensuring that your enemy wants to move. This is something that I've been thinking long and hard about, and there are multiple ways to do this, so let's have a look at them. The first is oblige them to move to attack you. My current character, Cornelius, is a bugbear. He has an additional reach of 5 feet. If he takes his turn and attacks you, he can come to within 10 feet of you, hit you with his staff, do the booming blade damage, and then walk away. In fact, he doesn't even need to walk away because he is still out of the reach of most melee characters. If they want to attack him, they still have to take another step forward. Ultimately, I will be taking that step back because I've also got Polearm Master, and I'd quite like to get that reaction attack in as well. But by using a weapon with reach, or the long arm feature of a bugbear, you can make sure that your target has to move if they want to attack you. That isn't the only way to do it though. I've also done this with a arcane trickster rogue who had the cunning action ability, so he could disengage as a bonus action, so he could run in there, do the hit, and then disengage and run out. And that was fine. There's also the mobile feat, which is really useful because if you attack a target, even if you miss, they can't make reaction attacks against you for the rest of the turn. So using the mobile feat, you can run in, do your hit, and then pull back. I've actually used the mobile feat on Cornelius as well because there's nothing stopping other targets coming in and getting too close and tying me up in close combat. Now, I want to keep my flexibility. The mobile feat also has the added bonus of additional movement speed, which I really value. So for me, a combination of the reach of a bugbear and the mobile feat gives me the freedom to move around the battlefield and obliges my targets to follow me if they want to attack me. But that's not enough because this is not a one-player game. You have the rest of your team, and if you attack a target and put your booming blade on it, but that target's already in combat with another of your teammates, that target is under no obligation to move to attack you because it has other targets it wants to attack. And I would much rather they try and follow me, or at least still have to move and trigger that booming blade damage. That's where the Crusher feat comes into play. You need a bludgeoning weapon for this. I'm already using a quarterstaff, so that's perfect. But on a hit, you can push your target 5 feet back. What this means is that even if the target is locked in with other teammates, I can still push it away, and whomever it wants to attack, it still has to move, and that will trigger the additional damage. Now, there's a slight complication to that, in that what if my eager teammates immediately step forward to attack that target, meaning it no longer needs to move? This is an issue you just have to work with the rest of your team. Ideally, you will be attacking a creature that has its turn after you, but before your teammates. So before they have chance to attack, the enemy creature is going to have to move itself and trigger that extra damage. Or if your teammates are well informed on your plan, they can see that your target is encased in the shimmering bubble of potential thunder damage and go, you know what, I'm not engaged with that target either, I'll go and attack something else and let it implode itself. So with a bit of coordination, you should be able to utilize the additional damage for Booming Blade without difficulty. So, to maximize Booming Blade, you need the ability to move freely around the battlefield. You need to give your target a reason to move after you've hit it, and you need to work with the rest of your team so that they know they can do certain things that will allow that damage to be triggered. That's how you maximize Booming Blade, and it's great fun. I highly recommend it. Booming Blade has one other little perk that I'd like to add in, and that is that you can use other class abilities at the same time as Booming Blade. Booming Blade plus a smite, Booming Blade plus a sneak attack, Booming Blade plus Battlemaster maneuvers. Eldritch Blast has its invocations, sure, and they're great, but you can't smite an Eldritch Blast. You can't sneak attack an Eldritch Blast. Booming Blade you can, and that's why I love it. So that's my quick guide. Let me know your experiences with Booming Blade. I'd love to hear how you maximise it, and enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.